Good morning and welcome to a wonderful little, not tutorial, but more a feature showcase where we showcase the concept of a solution in project succession. Project succession is a node-based pipeline automation tool I'm developing. It's currently not released yet, but it's getting closer day by day. We by now have, or like I by now have 228 different nodes. Uh, some of them are triggers, some of them are actions, and you can think of it as when something happens on your computer, something else will be executed. And this doesn't have to be one thing. You can make really impressive and large pipelines with that. So far, today we want to speak about the concept of a solution or like a logical file and reference IDE, more or less. So project succession by now is way more than just like connecting uh, a few nodes together. It can support multiple graphs. It can do, yeah, this is just moving towards like an advertisement video for project succession, and I personally don't mind, but you might have come to the video because of the solution topic. Um, so opening a solution or creating a new one is now an option in the drop-down menu. So let's just open one I have prepared. This is actually one which we are using at work. So I'm also using this tool professionally already at my employer's company. So, and what we now got is the solution tab here. If we click on it, you see like all the lists of files which are added to the solution. You can easily add new files. For example, if I make a new, open a new graph, I don't know, let's remove that here real quick, right? Then it's removed. And if we want to add it back in, we can just say we want to add it. We open the graph and then we add it back to the solution. And now it's back in here. You can see we can open up multiple solutions, no, multiple files within a solution. They are structured in tabs. You can still breadcrumb into the individual subgraphs. So if we have, for example, here a subgraph, you can still walk in there and we still have the breadcrumb going deep. So this didn't change, but you now also support, like we now also support, or I also support like tabs. The very next thing I want to show you is that the solution comes with more than just like a file explorer, right? This is nice, but it doesn't really bring us further. So one thing I want to show you is that you can now Control or Command F to open up a search field which lists all the nodes in this current graph and its subgraphs. So it doesn't work the way up, but it works the way down into the graph. What you see here, for example, is we can now scroll down a little bit and we see, okay, there's a comment node in the execute generation. Or path join, like down here you see a bunch of nodes. So you can also just search for nodes. Like if we look for a subgraph, we find the individual subgraphs which get executed, or if we look for a loop, we find all of the loops which get generated, plus like a loop returns, obviously because it's also in name. Let's see what this build request loop does. So we can just click on it and we directly open the corresponding file and zoom into this specific node. This is really cool already. We can do more though. We can now also check like, hey, what down-facing nodes does this node here? You can, with just pressing F, focus on it. If you haven't selected anything, you will select focus the entire graph. But we now want to know what nodes this is actually affecting downstream. So because obviously in this case it's pretty linear, we directly see, okay, this is going down here. So basically everything. But in case you have a really broad network which spikes out into different areas, right? So not all of the graph will be affected. And this is where we can actually check the outputs and trace how the output works. And now we see directly highlighted all the nodes which might or are affected by this node. We see like a sorted, more or less sorted. It obviously needs to put these two underneath each other, although they come in the same at the same time, more or less. And we have a string manipulation, a second string manipulation. Down there is the reroute, which also comes in this hierarchy exactly. And then we have select inputs. And there you see already how it divides a little bit. And you can see how it then ends up in the subgraph. So this already shows you a little bit how the data will flow, pre-execution actually. We also have this little thing, which are validation tests. In this case, it tells you, yeah, connecting any type from any to file picker, parameter, string value, verify this is correct. So we get actually some any output here. We don't know what kind of data we are selecting, and we're passing it into a string. So this will work, obviously, because the node will just convert it into a string. This is why it's provide string, called provide string node, right? But nonetheless, we have now these warnings. These are a little bit older actually, so they are not too new. And yeah, same here. If some passing happens, or here, you also might have something when you cut a connection actually. Let's delete this. You get like an error that this node will never run, and when you connect it back in, you will resolve that error. What else can I show you? Oh yeah, as you probably know or don't know, I haven't really communicated it much. So, but what we can do is we can do parameter scripting. For that, let's actually go into the top graph again. And we see here we have, for example, a port or like a webhook path. So let's, instead of hard coding that webhook path, have like a variables node. So an input, no, not an input, like a string provider. Where is it? Provide string, yeah. Which we just have here, which will not execute, but what we can do is basically we have here a little interface and make it beautiful. Like can rename this to be the webhook path. Let me call this webhook as an alias. So, and I already like did for foreshadow a little bit what an alias is. An alias is basically the variable name of that node. So the system will not use, like, it will still use the node identifier, which is like a long GUID, But if you want to reference this node somewhere, you can use this webhook variable now. If two nodes have the same variable, so if we actually duplicate this node now, you see both have now an error or warning. Okay, and they both have their webhook set, their alias set to webhook. But when we now execute that whole thing, we get a warning, duplicate node alias webhook. Multiple nodes share this alias, only one node parameter will be reachable. And obviously you don't want that, so you might want to resolve this. In this case, let's just delete it and keep one alias webhook. So we then just put it here, our webhook, which we want to provide. And we can now right click on any parameter, also on, because these are pre-executions. This is pretty neat. Connections are resolved on runtime. This means they can feed data which gets generated by the graph. Expressions get evaluated before the runtime, so it means we basically fill in just references. This is important to know because webhooks can't have runtime connections because they get basically built before the data is available. But we can fill them in with scripting, parameter scripting. So instead of now hard coding this generate icons path here, I set an expression. And now we have this little fx in front of it. And we have a little example alias.parameter name we want to use. So it also obviously complains that it cannot be empty, but we now know, here we have our webhook here. So we can reference to this. Let's just pressing add, and then you see already we have a few examples. We can also access our secrets, our environments, our subgraph, and potential subgraphs actually from this. But in this case, we want to access our webhook, and then we do the string value parameter of this webhook. And now what we have is we have referenced this parameter to this parameter. We can also say this here is just like generate icons. We just want the pure string. So we don't want the forward slash, but this specific parameter actually needs it, so we just put it in there. And now it's a little bit more procedural actually. We can also say hello there to add to the string value, right? So it will really just resolve that string value. Cool. Let's save this. When we now deploy this, it executes flawlessly. And one more thing, this webhook now has one usage. You see this here, and we see directly where it is used. So we can just click on it and see where it is used. And same for here. We have this little button which basically tells us, hey, this goes back to this node. So these nodes are now not only referencing the parameters, but it's also exposed to the editor that you can easily find what is referenced where. It's go to definition or find references in a classic IDE. We can also now, for example, say we want to have this webhook used the second time, right? This generate icons. So we can just say, okay, instead of having here default value, we set an expression and we just set I don't know, add watcher. Okay, it doesn't autocomplete inside of the node. So let me do it a little bit differently. We can just right click and copy the parameter path. And then just paste it in here. And now this node here has 2 usages. It still executes flawlessly, which is nice. One more cool thing I can show you for solutions is that when we now open up the console, it's currently empty because nothing happened while it was open. But let me share with you when we actually do something. So for example, re-execute this graph. You see all the nodes are now links. So we can just see, okay, if there's an error or an info or warning or whatever, we can just directly jump to this node, which was executing that sad log, and see like, hey, what went wrong here? In this case, it's all just information, but it's really fast to now navigate the graph through all of these little solution utilities. This is what I want to show you today. I hope you like it. Please join my Discord if you want to stay up to date. Also, link is in the description. Also, we have, or I have like a website also in the description where you can get yourself a little bit freshed up with what project succession in general is. And I hope to provide something to you some when soonish. I don't know how fast I will be because it's a little bit outside of my control right now, but I'll keep you updated. And for that, please join the different channels. See you around. Bye bye.